So people are kind of celebrating that. But the thing is, apparently Elon Musk is now arguing with the immigration, basically everyone that's in charge of immigration within the Trump administration over the H-1Bs and the Indians. And Musk is still championing bringing Indians in for tech. And this is apparently a very people were tweeting about it today. This is an active debate within the administration. We'll see who wins, who loses. So, Elon Musk, he's throwing Romans, but he's still trying to import Pajeets into America. So it's like, okay, well, that's not very Hitlerian. And look, what I see, the reason why Musk is putting his money and his influence behind, basically going after the wokes and, getting Trump back in, and now he's going into Europe and he's trying to get, the populist right installed in European countries, and he's saying things that are playing to some of our talking points on many issues. It's not because he's a white nationalist or because he's our guy. It's because he has recognized a couple simple truths. The first truth is that the American economy is basically fucked, and all Western economies are basically fucked. They're massively over-leveraged. In order for them to continue functioning, because the thing is, basically for the economy to work, all these investment bankers need to make exorbitant profits. If they don't continue making exorbitant profits, they can't pay back the insane debts that they have. And the leverage of the system falls apart, because the thing is that all the debt in the system is converted into, it's basically converted into assets that then get traded around by, all the top investors. So the economy has to keep growing. Everyone has to keep making profits. Otherwise, the whole thing comes crumbling down. There's never been this much interconnected leverage in any financial system ever in world history. So in order for that to happen, asset prices have to keep going up, and the value of labor also has to keep going up, which means basically they have to get more out of the American worker or the Australian worker or whatever, while simultaneously making everything more expensive, right? House prices have to go up. Every single basically major asset class has to go up in value. Otherwise, this whole thing comes crumbling down. So obviously, in order to facilitate that, immigration, is, as we can see in Australia, that's why they're bringing in Indian immigrants to kind of keep this whole, shit show continuing. And we can see how that's really parasitical upon our quality of life and how it's really destroying Australia. Much worse in Australia than in America. The only way to be able to get all of that to kind of work without screwing over the workers and pushing us, into a position where we get into like a revolutionary posture, is to basically build AI. Because the logic is, if they can build AI technology, a lot of these investors can put their money in all of these tech startups that will become multi-trillion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar companies, more realistically, and make shitloads of profit. That'll facilitate economic growth, but also it'll make labor more productive. Because say you're working for a company, and that company now only has to have half the size of the workforce that it used to have to produce the same stuff, because it can automate a whole bunch of jobs with AI. That basically means they can afford to pay the workers that they have left more. And so it was actually admitted by that Jew, Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock, which is the world's largest investment bank. He's been going on and on for years about how we need to have more immigrants, because otherwise we're going to have to pay workers too much and we won't be able to afford to do it. Now he's changed his tune and said, well, actually, a lot of these countries that have restrictive, like in East Asia, that restrict immigration, they'll probably do well with AI automation, because the thing is, even though their population is shrinking, we're going to automate away half the jobs anyway. So we don't need as many people anymore. And it's going to actually cause problems in the West if we have these multiracial societies and all of a sudden we automate away, half the jobs. So there seems to be a recognition in the kind of elite, investor class in America that in order for basically to get the economy to progress, to get technology to progress, in order to continue the charade so that they don't blow up the economy and also, massage politics in the correct direction, they have to wind back the wokeness, get rid of DEI, let, young white people rise through the ranks and build the technology that'll take things to the next level. Because the thing is, if if you have DEI and you put a bunch of like Indians and like Shaniqua, black chicks and so on in charge of everything, and like trannies and all this kind of nonsense, well, you're not going to build AI faster than the Chinese. The whole thing is going to fall apart. So they're trying to like elevate the position of the white man because they need the white man to build AI, to build spaceships, to build all the stuff that they need to advance to the next level technologically, economically, as well as
and to maintain it too. That sort of stuff needs a lot of maintenance, right? So you need to keep white people around for the maintenance.
Yeah. Also, they're trying to compete with China, and there's an imminent war with China, so they need to re-inspire patriotism. We can't have, we've talked about this on the show a lot as well, but also, so they're trying to compete technologically, economically, militarily with a serious adversary, as well as keep the economy together. And so there's this like balancing act where until they can build AI, they need to like stuff the country full of Indians to keep all the leverage in place that they need, because otherwise, basically the cost of labor will start going up because they're not replacing us with foreign workers. They'll have to pay everyone more. And then that will then make it impossible for companies to do business, and the whole thing could fall apart for that reason. So like basically the parasite class at the top have made a giant mess, and they've over leveraged themselves in this giant mess, as well as a lot of them are Jewish, and like Israel's under threat and so on. And if the American empire blows up, how can it protect Israel? Also, they've got all these massive companies built out of America. How can Elon Musk get his, space rockets to Mars if the American empire blows up and the economy blows up and they lose World War III to China? It's not going to be possible. So whether they be technological kind of aspirations, whether they be, Zionist aspirations, or just holding on to their fucking money, if they keep grinding the white man into the dirt with absolutely zero concessions and zero reasonableness, it's all going to, basically the parasite is going to consume the host and the whole thing's going to come crashing down. And that, I think, is basically what's driving the behavior of people like Elon Musk, and why Trump has been allowed to win and come back in. And, they're basically making concessions to us in various ways that we've been noticing. That's why this is happening. It's not because we're winning the argument or something. It's just because like reality, I think, is like dawning on a lot of these elites.
Do you think China is the greatest military threat to America right now? And if China and America were to go to war right now, who would win?
Well, I mean, that's hard to say. We've talked about this on the show before in the past, because
you don't think China's got the experience or like the manpower, but they don't really have the experience.
Well, it's not necessarily about it, because if there was a war between the United States and China, it's taking place in East Asia. And America's not going to invade China. If you try to invade China, they'll wipe you out. They've got they've got 1.4 billion people. They've got millions and millions of soldiers. How are you going to put your troops there and like get an invasion force and occupy a country of that scope? It's impossible.
Is there a way to cut them off from the surrounding? Is there a way to
do that? The way that they would fight them.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's what I'm thinking. How do you cut off? You'd want to cut China off resources, wouldn't you? So is that practical?
You bomb them.
Yeah. So the war would be a naval battle.
Flood all of them.
The war would be largely a naval battle and an air battle, because the thing is that China is dependent upon a lot of trade that goes by sea, right? Because China doesn't have enough natural resources to run its economy. It also is a net food importer. It grows a lot of food, but they've got 1.4 billion people. That's a lot of mouths to feed, right? So they need to be able to import a lot in of like raw materials, food, like agricultural products, oil. Oil's got to come in. But then at the same time, their entire economy is built around exporting to the world. So they also need to sell their crap to the rest of the world for, to keep their people employed. If America comes in with the Navy and shuts down the shipping lanes in East Asia and cuts China off from being able to engage in this international trade, then they've got to try and do it by land. Trying to do it by land is going to be a giant bitch, because it's actually like hundreds of times more expensive to move cargo by land than by sea. First of all. Second of all, they're going to have to travel across Eurasia, over the top of India, into the Middle East, into Europe. Plus, America is also allied with a lot of these European countries. And also, America is the #1 purchaser of Chinese crap in the world. So China's going to be in a very difficult position. So the objective of the Americans, they don't necessarily need to go into China and invade it and occupy it. If they can kind of block China off from accessing the rest of the world, militarily, diplomatically, China will eventually have a famine. The people will start starving. The economy will start grinding to a halt, and it will like fall apart internally. That would be the strategy. So the question is, does China have the capacity to like smash their way through that? I'm skeptical that they do. They could definitely do a lot of damage though. But I think I think the Americans are more likely to win a World War III scenario like that than China, because China's just in a really difficult position. Because they're basically having to go on the offense. They'd have to go out and secure not just like their immediate area, they'd have to go and basically take over all of Southeast Asia, bomb the shit out of Australia, bomb the shit out of India, destroy the entire US Navy, which is the world's biggest Navy, blow up all of their aircraft carriers, just destroy everything. And then to make it totally safe for commercial shipping to flow through East Asia or through Southeast Asia into East Asia. Because the thing is, like, you're a commercial shipper and you're running ships from the Middle East or from Europe into East Asia. And there's an active war between China and America's blowing shit up and impounding ships. Imagine the insurance cost to put a crew and a ship and send like, barrels of oil or whatever to China. You're not going to do business under those conditions. It's impossible. So China would have to totally defeat America, whereas all America and its allies, which includes us and the Japanese, the Indians, the British, whatever, all we have to do is just sit there and blow up a few ships or just create enough of a mess that the ships stop, and then China's fucked. So that gives like a massive advantage to our side. That's the reason why China hasn't invaded Taiwan yet, because obviously Taiwan's very small, China's massive. You think they could just like set upon Taiwan and fuck it up. But the reason why they're cautious to do so is if they triggered that outcome, America could then collapse the entire Chinese economy and then set them back like, 50 years.
Does that mean war is not going to happen anytime soon? It's almost like there's a trade war happening, and there has been a trade war happening for a while. But I'm not really schooled in all the ins and outs of that, so I won't comment. But would China be able to muster up any allies if an open war situation did develop?
Yeah, obviously, I think the Russians are with them. The Iranians are with them. A lot of the Eurasian countries are with China because they have a lot of trade with China. Like the Pakistanis, a lot of the Muslim countries are leaning towards China over America. America's alienated them for a lot of reasons, obviously, and also China has a lot of allies in South America and Africa and stuff. But does that really matter too much under these conditions? Probably not. And that's also part of the reason why Trump is going to try and probably clean things up in Ukraine and normalize relations with Russia, because that makes this whole situation worse. If he can kind of win Russia back into a bit more of a neutral position, that only weakens China's relative position. So these are like the larger dynamics that are going on and contextualizing what's happening in politics, and I think you have to take all that into account to explain how come like 2 years ago, Trump was getting put in prison. And if you didn't agree that there was 48 genders, like maybe you were going to get put in prison. And now, Trump's barging in and the Beaners are going to get deported. And, Elon Musk is talking about Paki rape gangs and we're all back on Twitter and he's throwing Romans. What the fuck's going on? I think that's what's going on. Like if you look at these larger dynamics, it explains why a portion of the American elite and the Jews are like, fuck, like we kind of need to bring a little bit of like, we need to turn the tap of white power, not to 100, because they're afraid of if it goes to 100, it would also overwhelm them. But like we need like, 30% white power or something, or 40%. They're trying to find that perfect ratio of white power to restabilize the system and maintain like the strength of the status quo and defend it against its enemies and its internal instabilities. Because if they just have like runaway leftism, this whole thing is not sustainable. It's just going to eat itself.
Wonder what that means for the average punter, the average working class American, Australian. Would things improve much? Their standard of living, the demographics? Probably not. As you said, what we've summarized is that the immigration is probably going to continue because the whole American Western economy is like a Ponzi scheme that kind of relies on it. And obviously Elon Musk is not against the quote-unquote legal immigration route. H-1B visas is just one
We'll see if
example.
Musk can win the argument, though. there's people in the Trump administration that want to lock the Indians out too. Like there's an active argument about it. So we'll see who wins. It's like, this is the test. Now they're in power. We'll see who wins. If Trump wins, sorry, not Trump. If Musk wins, that'll prove that, basically big money and like corporate interests, rule the roost and nationalists got fucked again. But if nationalism can somehow win and Musk gets cucked on the issue and they do shut down the Indians coming into America and deport the Mexicans, that's interesting too. That shows that they're giving some concessions to whites. That doesn't mean that we're back though, because it's going to be a limited concession. And it's clear that if that's the case, that there's a recognition by, certain other elements in the kind of, in the Jewish camp in America, the Zionist camp, that we got to win white people back on side because they're our only allies. They're the only allies of Israel. And we kind of need to get them, we need to like revive patriotism if we have to go and fight China. So I think, and that's all part of it. But I think they're definitely going to give concessions to whites, whether the Indians come in on H-1Bs into America or not. They are going to start winding back DEI. They are going to start probably, I could see them, trying to get whites back into the universities. Because in America, all the top universities, it's almost impossible to get into them if you're a white man at this point, no matter how good your scores are at school. I could see them going after that, trying to get whites back into, these fields, try and like, because they need whites to build the future. Like you can't have non-whites running all these tech companies and big business in America and expect to like just keep like dominating the world, because that's the whole reason why America got so strong in the first place. It got strong off the back of Aryan ingenuity. They brought a whole bunch of intelligent people over from Germany and from all the best parts of Europe. They brought all them over and said, here, land of opportunity, money, resources, capitalism, boom, let's see what you can do. And then, they built all these like incredible companies and all this tech innovation, and that drove America forward. So obviously they're going to try and bring that back because they need it, because now the Chinese have caught up, because they've been, dicking around for decades, basically just, reorganizing society around elevating all the non-whites into positions of power and influence and fucking over whites. And, that's shooting themselves in the foot at a certain level. Like they could get away with it for a while because America was so far ahead, but America's not so far ahead anymore. So they can't keep doing it and expect all of this shit to keep working out. Like eventually the empire will crumble, the economy will crumble. And there's also like another dynamic in like, economic structures called Kondratiev waves. Every like 40 to 50 years, major tech innovations have to like drive the next cycle of investment. That basically, this happened in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s with the tech boom. But it started in the 80s, that the beginning of this cycle, and it's kind of come to the conclusion now. And then like, the previous 40 to 50 years, it was all oil companies and automotive companies. They were the biggest companies in the world. Then it was all tech companies, computing companies, software companies. So like the biggest companies in America now are like Apple, Google, Meta, all of these tech companies. Well, when you're if you're in investment banking and you're dumping your money in tech companies in the 80s and the 90s or the 2000s, there's a lot of money to be made because there's all these new companies popping up and turning into like multi-billion-dollar companies. Well, now all the tech companies have kind of been built. And so like if you go and buy Google stock or you go and buy, Apple stock or whatever, like it might do well, but you're not going to make insane money because all the money's already been made. It's already established. So they need to have a new technological vista, a new paradigm that can take the economy to the next level. And obviously that's going to be AI. So now that's all the focus. All the big, investors, that's all they're talking about. And they think that's going to be the magic bullet to like pull them out of an imminent economic crisis. And so we'll see. Either they do it and it works, or they fail to build AI because they've got too many Pajit software developers or something and they can't get the job done. They don't have the quality anymore that they used to have, and this whole thing falls apart. And I'm quite happy with that scenario. If they collapse the economy, it's going to be real easy to like sell. If we have like 20-30% unemployment, it's going to be a lot easier to sell National Socialism to the people. But if they can figure out how to build AI, well, that then buys the system probably another 40 years.
Well, there's going to be opportunity, like regardless of how contrived this emerging light nationalism is, there's going to be opportunity to really gain ground and reestablish a bit of a future for ourselves in our own community. What do you reckon, Tom? I know that a lot was said just then, but what's really jumping out at you?
Yeah, there's definitely an internal struggle within the Republican Party because of how American politics is structured. European politics and even Australian politics is way better in the sense that you can kind of impact the center from the outside, whereas American politics is geared that you have to be kind of inside the camp to really do anything because it's a uni party. I have noticed that there were people within the Trump administration during the handover saying that they want to put a freeze on the H-1Bs. And their argument was that we need to vet people better. We need better vetting. And then you've got Musk hitting back saying, well, this is just more red tape. This is more bureaucracy. This is what we're being employed to get rid of. Get rid of the red tape. Just boom, full steam ahead. And so what you have is this massive clash between I don't know if you guys checked it out, and I don't know if the audience has, but it's worth just skimming through it. Trump, the White House page, website has been updated, and Trump basically put forward his, I don't know, it was like almost a 50-point plan as to how he's going to